How do I stay in love and act in love when my romantic partner is angry with me? How do I keep the spark alive when the relationship is aging? We're full of obligations, we're short on time, and we're carrying a lot of stress. These are questions that I dig into with today's guest, Steph Sifandos, author of the book Tuned In and Turned On: A Path to True Connection, Deep Healing, and Lasting Love. This was a great conversation with Steph. We started by talking about his own transformation and what brought him to a place where he was actually interested in really doing his inner work and really transforming the way that he was showing up in romantic relationship. And we talked about a big turning point in his life. And then we checked in because we talked a few years ago. He came on the show about 4 years ago. And since then he's had a kid and deepened in his marriage to Christine, who also has been on the show in the past. And, we talked about how being a parent has pushed his edges and transformed him in different ways, and in what ways his relationship has been challenged. I think if you're in a long-term relationship, and especially if you have kids or a kid, you know what I mean. In that, the more responsibility we take on in life, the more our relationship can be put under stress, the more our relationship can take a back seat. And so how do you keep the fire alive? How do you stay connected when all of that is at play? How do you not become another casualty of romantic relationship and its difficulties? So really insightful, beautiful lessons coming through Steph in this episode. He shares very vulnerably and authentically about his own imperfections and the ways that he doesn't show up well. And I just love this guy. And it brought out my own vulnerability and sharing some of my more unsavory parts, or things that I still need to change, and we had a really good conversation. So I'm excited to share this one with you folks, and I hope if you feel called to it that you pre-order his book. You might wonder, where have I been? Where has Evolving Man been? Because I haven't released an episode in quite a while, and that's because I was directing my energy towards starting another podcast. I started a podcast called Arca Talks, the Arca Talks podcast for the Arca Brotherhood. And we haven't released it yet, but it's going to be released next month, in the first month of February 2026. And we've already recorded a bunch of episodes, and I'm really excited to release them. Why start another podcast in 2026? Why start another podcast? As co-director for the Arca Brotherhood, I've always had a desire to share more about what happens within our walls in the circles that we have, to share more of the stories that we have in our brotherhood. We have 700 members and about 70 groups in the Arca Brotherhood. And man, I have heard some amazing stories. I have seen some immense transformations in the time that I've been with Arca and sitting in circles with guys. And it's time to share some of those things with the public. It's time to share some of the medicine, the real rich medicine that we have in our circles, with the public. And so that's what we're doing. It's a show that's going to have multiple hosts. I'm not the only host. I can't do that. I can't do 2 podcasts at the same time. I can't do all the things. My co-director, Matt Cook, is also a host. And we're going to have a number of other guys, other leaders in the Brotherhood, host episodes on the show. I'm just helping to get it kickstarted. So you can expect raw, deeply authentic conversations and inspiration on men's inner work, personal growth, covering all the men's work topics, fatherhood and how our fathers relate to, how we understand our own selves, wounding, healing, relationships, a man's relationship to his own archetypes, the king, the warrior, the magician, the lover, the beast, the green knight, all of these things, shadow. There's so much good stuff coming in this podcast, and I'm excited to share it with you folks. My favorite one that I've recorded thus far was with my best bud, Steve Parr. He was actually, we did the first episode of the Evolving Man podcast. The first episode of this podcast was done with Steve, just me and him sitting and having a real talk together down at Float House in Vancouver, something like 10 years ago. And in this episode on the Archetalks podcast, we dove real deep into our friendship and the highs and the lows of our friendship, some of the most memorable, beautiful, connective moments that we've had as bros, and some of the hardest moments, the challenges and the fights that we've had, and the things that have threatened to pull us apart. And we even do like a kind of like a process together live on the show where we just set a timer and like share with each other and then see what comes through. So that was a great conversation for me. I felt really connected to Steve and felt like we shared a special little piece of medicine with the world on that episode. So I'm excited for you folks to see that. So watch out for the Archetalks podcast. I'll share a link to it the next time I release an episode once it's already out. And like I said, it's coming out the first week of February. I'll still be doing Evolving Man podcasts, so stick with me. I've got some interviews set up for 2026, including the one that I'm introing right now. So thanks for sticking around for the journey, folks. What's on with Evolving Man this year? I want to share with you guys some things that I'm excited about before we get into this episode. The first one is a program called The Path to Conscious Love. This is a program, it's a video course for singles or couples who want to do the inner work of exploring what's there for you. What are your relational challenges in romantic relationship, and what tools can you pick up and practice in romantic relationship? This course is a full library of relationship teachings, processes, worksheets, and tools. It's massive. And as I said, it's useful for couples or singles. It's a combination of creating conscious love, which I created with my wife, a 6-module video course with worksheets, etc., and a course called Wisdom of the Heart, which I created with my friend Nick Solacek and with my wife Shalina. 8-module course with a ton of relationship teachings, a ton of practices and processes and handouts and journaling that you can do, like stuff that's focused on your own inner work, but also a lot of tools that you can sit down and practice with a partner. We walk you through this stuff, how to do an imago dialogue, how to have a clearing, how to create a relationship vision, how to do a wheel of relationship exercise where you essentially do a report card on your relationship and look at these 10 major categories and you score yourselves on where you're at in each of those and explore how to improve your relationship. There's a ton of stuff in there that I'm really excited to share with the world. So I'll leave a link for that in the show notes as well. It's The Path to Conscious Love, and it's on the Rising Woman website. As far as live programs go, I've got 2 things happening in the next few months here that I want people to know about. One is the Conscious Relationship Council. We're going to do it again. It's launching again on February 3rd. This is a live 12-week relationship training course for men. It's a dojo where we step in together in a sealed container for 12 weeks, live on Zoom with myself and my friend Nick Solacek, who's a certified imago therapist. And we do the inner work to prepare ourselves to show up better in partnership. I talk a lot about that on this episode with Steph. We talk about men needing to do their own work away from their relationship on their own in order to show up well in relationship. So we do that inner work on the calls. We practice it with each other. There's homework in between the calls. And then we share tools with the guys live on the calls. We go through them and teach them how to use them. And then we practice them together in dyads. We break off into small groups and we practice these tools and like, okay, how to sit and listen and get curious about my partner. And it's amazing, man. This program, it really moves the needle for guys in terms of how they show up in relationship. They are more empowered and more able to respond differently because they know what the alternatives are to their default, right? We all have a default and we need to learn how to get out of that. It's part men's group, part relationship workshop. And in the beginning, we all kind of don't know each other. And then at the end, we kind of don't want it to end because we've really bonded quite immensely over the 12 weeks. So if you're a man who wants to level up in his relationships, the Conscious Relationship Council is a winner every time. That's why I'm still running it with Nick. I just love doing it with him. We get such great results and such great feedback from guys. So I'll share that in the show notes as well. That's on my website, the Conscious Relationship Council. The last thing here is a men's retreat that I'm running in Mexico. I'm heading to Mexico with my family very soon, and I'm running the Baja Fire and Flow weekend with the Arca Brotherhood. This is a 3 days, 4 nights. We called it Fire and Flow because, my co-facilitator, Steve Sal DeBus, is a fiery, like hopped up, jacked up dude who is well-versed in men's work and just has a ton of energy and a ton of he really walks with a lot of like old man wisdom that has a lot of fire behind it. And he has huge impact. He's got a channel on YouTube called Broke Millionaire, if you want to check him out. And I know the fire as well myself, but I also know the flow and how to get into the water with guys. And so we mix some of these fiery exercise with more watery exercises and really just expand men's hearts, and integrate the shadow and send guys home feeling fulfilled, more connected, more grounded, and, with a deep sense of satisfaction. This is in the Baja is where we run this, in the Baja of Mexico. And men will be staying at Yandara Yoga Center. You can look that up if you're interested in that. And I'll drop a link to the event in the show notes. I'm not going to speak much about what we do on these weekends because that's an important element of it. But if you want to go face yourself and expose yourself and find your edges and challenge yourself, but also do it with a circle of solid men who are on a similar path, this is for you. And if you've ever wanted to do a men's retreat with me, this is for you. A lot of times our ARCA retreats are not open to non-members, but this one is. So if you want to come work with me, come to Mexico. It's a good opportunity to get some sun, and we might even do some surfing. We're definitely going to jump in the ocean and do some men's work while you're at it. So that's the last weekend of February is when we're doing this retreat. So really looking forward to it. I did this retreat last year around the same time. And so some of the photos you'll see are from that retreat, and I had a really good time doing it. So we're just leveling up this year. We're making it better, and we'd love to have you with us. So with that, that's what's going on with Evolving Man. And I think that's enough delay, folks. Really excited to share this conversation with Steph Sifandos. Enjoy. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Evolving Man podcast. I'm here with a man named Stefanos Sifandos. And it's good to have you here, man. Second time on the show. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be here, brother.
So maybe we should start just by zooming out on who you are today, perhaps in some contrast to who you were in 2021 when you last came on the show to talk to me. looking at the larger categories of your life and just, sharing with people where you're at right now in your
Yeah.
hero journey.
Yeah. So if I define that by, say, titles or identities, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only and I can share where I believe I was back then and where I am now. Of course, the only difference really, outside of course, the grade or the intensity of that identity and how I relate to it has changed, but they're the same as being a father.
Yeah.
But back in 2021, I was a few months away from being a father. My little girl was born in early 2022. And so, man, seeker, husband, father, creative, deeply curious about the world, can be angry. I can be reactive. That hasn't changed too much. Just again, the
Human.
intensity and the grades have. In my patterns, in my personality, in my ego. Again, that hasn't changed. It's still there. I'm still, that human part of me is still here. But the relationship to those things have changed. I mean, as you know, man, having a child, it really, for me personally, has helped me come face to face with far more of myself. I definitely done substantial, for lack of a better term, substantial amount of inner work up to that point, and nothing really could prepare me for what has transpired the last 4 years or so. It's been remarkable and tremendous and deep and painful and confronting and devastating and scary and heart opening and everything, man. Like it's the ultimate medicine journey, especially if we allow, I think powerful, paradoxically unique and not unique experiences, such as being a parent or being in an intimate relationship with another human, romantic sexual partnership with another human. I say paradoxically because it happens everywhere. Millions of children are born every year, obviously. And it is a deeply unique experience, paradoxically. And so those experiences, if we allow them to, really can shape us in very deep and profound, meaningful ways. And I do my best to allow that to happen, albeit very uncomfortable sometimes, very uncomfortable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely unique in the span of a person's life story, like you spend all of this time not having a kid and learning how to navigate the flows of life, the ups, the downs, the extremes of emotion, all the stuff that you said there. And then you have a kid, and it's almost like that all of those previous extremes get stretched further, your depth of love expands, your depth of grief, your depth of suffering, your depth of sleep deprivation, sacrifice, devotion, all of those things are expanded by this experience, and I remember people telling me like, yeah, you never really know until you do it, and I always thought there was like this parent club that people were just sort of like, their egos were invested in being parents, and that a lot of this stuff, a lot of this talk came from a sense of like identifying as a parent and this sort of egocentrism where your ego can sort of co-opt whatever you're doing at the time. But now I get it a lot more, because it's really the deepest practice, the deepest devotion, the deepest sacrifice a person will really ever make in their lives is having a kid, and that stretches all of your edges. It stretches you
massively.
in all the ways, right?
Yeah, deeply.
Yeah. So I'm excited to definitely, like, major themes in this conversation. I would love to touch on relationship, and what it's like to be a married man with a kid, and in midlife, the struggles that come with that, the opportunities that come with that, as well, touching on parenting from time to time, because you and I are on similar journeys. You're a little bit ahead of me. I had my kid in late 2022. So it was cool to like watch you get that start and share what it was like, and then follow behind you. And in the meantime, kind of cool, you and I ran into each other in Mexico and ended up having a boogie at a beach party with some of your guys from your men's group. That was a cool coincidence. Yeah. So I think maybe a nice place to go would be, I heard about this turning point in your life, and I've never actually talked to you directly about it. Would love to hear you tell the story of like, what was the big shift for you when you kind of like hit your bottom in life and sort of saw the opening for something different?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I think for all of us, man, we have, whether we recognize and realize it or not, we have multiple turning points or the potential for turning points in our lives, right? These experiences that we have that are so in our face that say to us, hey, you actually can change right now. This thing that you're experiencing that you really don't want to experience anymore, you don't have to be on repeat. You actually can change. Here's how. All you need to do is actually embrace it, surrender to it, submit to it, accept it, do the hard thing of actually facing it, and your life can be different. And I think we as humans are presented with multiple turning points in our lives, multiple rock bottom circumstances. The one that you're specifically referring to, I really expand in great detail in my book, and I'll give you sort of the high level now. It was, if I sort of go back from that moment. My partner and I at the time, this was over a decade ago, partner and I at the time were trying to make things work. She had found out that I was unfaithful in the relationship and immensely unfaithful in terms of intensity and volume and so forth, like, in alignment with addiction. Mm-hmm. And we were working through that. She had decided we both had decided to try and work through it, right? And at that point, I was being extremely honest in my life, more than I ever had been before, ever. And that was very confronting in its own way. But then doing that with her as well, and that was a bit of a roller coaster. We tried to make that work for 7 or 8 months, and during that period of time, there was beautiful connection, but there was also intense disconnection and intense disharmony, right? Where she would feel all the feelings, and I tried my best to hold it, and sometimes I would, and there were times I just couldn't, right? Mm-hmm. And there was one morning I came back, I was out and I came back, and she was violent, and I had to restrain her, and I left the house, and I was just in despair, man. I'm like, fuck, is this my life? Like, yeah, I think I want to be with her, but not really, but there's too much water under the bridge. And but beyond her, what had actually very little to do with the relationship and the commitment I made to actually uncovering me and facing all of me and choosing and saying to myself, I can't live my life like this. It was a big catalyst, that whole her unearthing and discovering. I wasn't forthright with it. She discovered it, right? Her intuition and so forth. And it got me to a place where like I just didn't want to live my life like that anymore. And so I started unearthing all the unprocessed, unconscious, unresolved stuff that was feeding into that behavior and understanding myself and connecting to the parts of myself that I had disavowed and disowned and run away from for decades. And it was very confronting and very painful. And that's the stuff that was depressing me, essentially. And I was working with coaches and therapists and spiritual guides and energy workers. And I went all in, man. Like I stopped my businesses that I had at the time, which weren't doing that well anyway. They were startups and they just weren't doing that well anyway, because I was just so displaced, right? And immature and all those things. And I went into massive debt and I was just spiraling, and the stuff I was unearthing, and I have a pretty intense personality. So the way I was, at that time dealing with my healing was, well, let me go fucking all in. I'm either going to commit suicide, end up in a mental asylum, or get through it. Like, go with the 3 choices I gave myself. There was very little. I was learning how to be graceful with myself because I'd spent so many years listening to the intensity and the harshness and the abuse of my father and my mother. And I allowed that to be my voice as well, right? And that's how I treated myself, and that's how I treated the world. And so I left the house, and that was a series of, those events weren't unfamiliar. And I went to the ocean. It was winter. It was pretty cold. And I love the beach. I was just at the ocean, and I live by the ocean. And I just was looking out at the sea, and it wasn't raging, but it was rough. Mm-hmm. And I just walked in, and I just thought to myself, I just don't want to be here anymore. I can't keep doing this. I was being a victim. I would look back now, and I was victimizing myself, right? And it was also a lot. Like that was also true. It was just a lot what I was moving through. And I thought to myself, I'm a pretty good swimmer, right? So I'm going to have to swim out. I was just thinking, I'm just going to swim. I'm going to swim and keep swimming and keep swimming. And, in Perth, we have a lot of sharks as well. So I thought I'm either going to get eaten by a shark, I'm going to get, drowned. I'm just going to keep swimming. Like I'm really fucking tired of this. There's no way I'm getting to Rottnest, which is an island, which is about 12 miles away, 18 kilometers, 19 kilometers away. I'm not going to get there. I'm going to die before that. Right. So I'm just going to go. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to kill myself. And I know so many men that have had so many moments of that suicidal ideation, contemplation, and being really close, and then I know men that have done it. Yeah. Many, actually.
Me too.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. Anyone that takes their life in that way. I didn't want to do that. I was rationalizing. I didn't think I was going to get through what I was going to get through. And so in that moment, I thought to myself, I chose to submit. I chose to give it to God. I thought, what's one last try going to do? I don't really want to do this anyway, but I also don't think I can keep going like this. I don't see a way out. So let me just give it to God. So I said, God, show me a sign that if I'm meant to be here, show me a sign. I'm sitting there in the cold, fucking in the water, waiting, nothing. I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to be a little more specific. And I wanted to be really tight with it. And I had to trust the outcome. I was so fatigued just from life that whatever it was, I was just going to take action on it. So if I didn't get the sign, I was going to swim. And if I got the sign, my intention was to not swim. And so I said, all right, show me dolphins right now. I had my eyes closed. I opened my eyes, and like a few meters, a few feet, not far from me, a small pod of dolphins, just like mummy, daddy, baby, whatever, right?
Wow.
Just 3 dolphins just there. Now, and then be clear, like dolphins weren't uncommon in this area, right? I could see them every now and then. But on a really stormy day, pretty unusual. Man, I just started crying. I just sitting there, just in the cold water, just fucking crying. And I thought, okay, I've got to keep going. Like, I'm not going to be given something I can't handle. I had a couple of different thoughts, like I've got to harden up a little bit. I've got to be a little more resilient. And simultaneously, as multiple truths can live in the same space at the same time, I need to be kinder to myself. And I left the ocean that day being willing to not give up. And, many years later, I'm here. And there's been a couple of dark points since then, for sure, more than a couple. And that point really anchored my faith and my ability to keep moving and know when to move and know when to pause, but not to give up. Big difference, big distinction.
Mm-hmm. I love that story, man. It's a powerful story. And, that sense of being trapped as a man, or just as a human, like we get to these points where we feel trapped by the weight of everything we're feeling, the inability to see a way out. It's like we're being compressed and we want out. We want out. Yeah. Yeah. And I've felt that myself. I've seen that in my friends. I've also seen men take their own lives, and it's an animal instinct to, like, when the pain gets so much, you try to escape that pain.
100%.
And from an addiction standpoint, you said it. So I'll say you were an addict, and here you were in a moment where it's time to take the drugs away. Right. And people who listen to my show know that you can be addicted to more than drugs. It can be any behavior that feels good. And so when you take that away, here comes the pain. Here comes that pain you've been running from the whole time. And it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, and you're so used to running from it, and you've been running towards your drug of choice or your process of choice. And if you can't have that anymore, it's right there in your face, you know? And so I've seen that suicide becomes a contemplation for a lot of people early in
Yep.
recovery or on the sobriety journey, because you're not able or allowed to go to that old thing anymore. And so there you were, trapped and or feeling trapped. But then having this moment where the surrender is like a really key point, I think, when
Hmm.
you're like, oh, okay, like this has broken me. Like, what do I do? You know? And just that opening, that the pain actually can create an opening
Certainly
for a
does.
person, right? And that's what's in the 12-step program. Is like this, the first step is this admission, it's a surrender. It's an admission of like,
Mission surrender for sure. It's
I can't
trust.
do this. I can't do it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
what will you have me do? You know?
It's effectively trusting that connection will come to you. At the root of all addiction is disconnection, is sense
Mm-hmm.
that I don't belong or I'm not enough or I don't matter. And when we trust in that way, we're trusting that connection will come to us, that we're important enough for connection to come to us, and that we're adept enough to be able to see and feel and absorb and recognize the connection that comes to us. In other words, that we then in those moments deem ourselves to be worthy. That's the
Mm-hmm.
underlying premise, in my opinion, underneath all of that. It's a submission to I'm open to connection and it will come to me and I deserve it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, that hits home too, especially in the circumstance you were in. The shame of infidelity and just all the consequences of your behavior coming to bear, and you having to hold those things again without running. And shame at the core is this like
Mm.
unworthiness. I'm not, I don't deserve to live. And so there you are contemplating suicide, and you get this sign that like, hey, you're redeemable. You do
Mm.
deserve to live. You've got some stuff to clean up, but you deserve to be here in this world. Yeah. Beautiful moment, man.
Mm.
And I'm sure it wasn't just a straight shot from there to success. I'm sure you had your ups and downs, but from that point, um, yeah, how did things go from that moment?
Yeah, I think that was another one of those starting points, right? And look, it was the beginning of the end of our relationship, and that's of course was meant to be in that way. And I never intended to hurt her, and I did, and my actions and behaviors and insecurities and immaturities and lies and dishonesty and all those things hurt both of us, and she played her role and we all play roles. Like it's, in retrospect, looking back now, sure, I can see and feel all that. But that really was the cat again, that situation became the greatest catalyst for me to really look deeper at myself and, ultimately begin to love the parts of me that I'd neglected and abused for so long, and see myself in a new way and choose differently, like literally choose a different path and different choices and different actions, and choose
Mhm.
to just be more honest with people in my life, with myself, and which was very confronting because it was so new for me. I'd spent so many years just hiding and in the shadows, whether it's in the sex industry or whether it's in, in infidelity and cheating, or just pretending to be someone that I wasn't, just wearing masks, man, so much.
Was it hard for you to let go of that relationship?
No, because it was so volatile and intense at the end. I mean,
Right.
yes, there was a difficulty and a sadness, but there was also a relief.
Right.
But there was a relief that, man, like this is actually over. Like the
Mm-hmm.
the 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 intense interactions, it was getting a little too unhealthy,
Mm-hmm.
and confronting in a way that wasn't. It wasn't good.
Yeah.
It wasn't productive for us. It wasn't healing.
It wasn't
Um,
healing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I I just want to say I love how human you are in all of your shares and all of your social media, and every time I talk with you, because it's just refreshing these days. And
Thanks, man.
I just appreciate how much vulnerability you bring, and bring in your stories. And um, I think this is an important point because I talk to people who are in toxic relationships all the time. I talk to people who are in very volatile, dramatic relationships all the time, and they're in the beginning they're struggling to let go of those things. There's a part of them that's really kind of like addicted to that drama. I had Scott Lyons on the show. He wrote the book Addicted to Drama,
Mm.
and but if you truly want to be healthy in your life, like you really want to step into another level of healthy relationship, sometimes it makes sense to let that relationship go and realize how even just the push pull, the drama of that relationship is can be an addiction in itself, and that needs to be repatterned, and that sometimes it can't be repatterned with that person that you've already set it up with, you know.
Truth.
Yeah.
That was the question I was sitting with. Like, is there too much water under the bridge? Are we both willing to go to the places that we need to make this work? And the truth was, we both weren't, and we both were unable. And I don't think we were both meant to. You know, again, I don't want to speak for her in that instance and what her history was with infidelity or what her relationship was to the masculine. And all that. But all trauma bonding is a perfect storm, man. It's all complementary wounds coming together to be different with. And if you really strip it back, not to reduce it, but to just simplify something that's very complex, you can define trauma in many ways, right? But one of the ways in which you can understand trauma is not only the event that happened or the events that happened, but how we psychologically, relationally, neurologically, physiologically interpret that event, and then what we make it mean and how we bring that into our lives about ourselves and about people. Are people, situations safe, etc.? Are they not? And how hypervigilant we become, right? But ultimately, when we're looking at that trauma, if you like, we generally speaking, we experience disempowerment in those moments. In those moments of trauma or intensity, we're experiencing disempowerment. When we come together in relationship, which is such a beautiful sacred mirror, right? All relationships, but there's you could even say there's sort of defining categories of relationship which have greater impact, like such as the parent-child relationship or romantic sexual partnership relationship, which is again, like what I speak to in the book is like these are some of the most powerful relationships we have, and what they actually give us access to is beyond what we think is even possible. But those relationships are giving us, the trauma bonding that occurs is giving us an opportunity to, if we allow it to, safely play out an empowered action as opposed to a disempowered action, to close the trauma loop physiologically, right, but to also see ourselves different relationally and psychologically, right? And then ultimately that leads to a spiritual enhancement of self. The problem is that the trauma or the reenactment of that trauma in a different way between two people many years later of the original wound or the original wounds is so intense that we miss that point, and we're so busy surviving in those moments that we don't actually get to be different and to be more empowered. That's why inner work is so important. That's why self-awareness work is so important. That's why somatic work is so important, inner child work, all the modalities, right? But to start to level out and learn to regulate the body so that you can be different. Because you can only be different from a regulated place. Because when you're dysregulated, you're reactive and you're in survival mode. Mm-hmm. And so we just weren't able to, we were both being triggered, like that's an example, and we were just unable to be more empowered. We had moments, but we weren't able to continuously allow that to happen. And there was so much hurt and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes too much baggage. It's dragging you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too much cleanup to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you frame that. The purpose of romantic relationship being there's the unconscious contract there to reenact our trauma and so that we can heal it, or reenact our childhood environment, like as Harville and Hendricks say in Getting the Love You Want, reenact your childhood environment so that you can get the love from your parents or your caregivers that you always wanted, right?
Yeah, and then you never got.
Yeah. And in the process, your relationship can become a nightmare.
Yes.
Right? Your worst
For
nightmare
sure.
comes to bear. It comes up so that you can face that and figure out how to navigate that without making your partner the enemy and turning against them. That's the tricky part, right?
Which
So
we
yeah,
often do because we're projecting, right? We're projecting that unresolved, unprocessed pain from generally a primary caregiver, a bully, a teacher, another adult that abuses, etc., on that person in that moment, because there's an affliction that the way in their behaving reminds us more unconscious than not of that thing. And so we close up, armor up, become defensive, and we trigger their reactivity, they trigger our reactivity, and we're just escalating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here you are in a committed marriage with a 3 and a bit year old, almost a 4-year-old,
Nearly four, yeah.
right, daughter.
Yeah.
And I've had your wife on the show, Christine. She came on the show shortly after you did, which was great. I had a great conversation with her. She's awesome. And you're making this thing work. You're making a relationship work. I remember looking at married men a lot when I was a kid and being like, wow, you're just a trapped, dead inside, loser driving a minivan. I had all these judgments of married men, and you're not having any sex. You don't actually love your wife. Like I saw guys where there was like no indication that there was actually love in that relationship, and like, oh, this is just like you guys are just together for the kids, or you guys are just together for money. Like this is actually a business relationship framed as a romantic relationship. Like you guys are pretending to be happy, and so yeah, I mean, big question is like, how do we avoid those pitfalls? How do you prevent that slow slide that it seems so many people are prone to slipping into, where they're married, but they drift apart. They drift,
Yeah.
the love gets bled out of the relationship, or other stuff becomes a priority. I mean, a whole other thing is like just sex and connection, which is definitely something that that has changed for me and my partner since our kid came along. Like our kid is a very high contact, high energy needed, high input. And so the amount of time we get alone together, the amount of connection time we get is sparse. And, and that can take its toll on a relationship. So I'm curious, like, what insights you have on all of that.
Yeah. So I'll say something that's probably going to sound a little controversial, and then I'll answer it. I'll answer it in two different ways, essentially, right? So to answer your question directly, like, how do you avoid the pitfalls of that? You don't. Like, that's a controversial response. You don't, right? But let me unpack that a little bit. So what I mean by that is you don't pretend to be something that you're not, and you don't avoid what's actually there. Just be in truth with it. That's the first step. Like you spoke about Alcoholics Anonymous earlier. Well, hi, my name is Stefan. I'm an alcoholic. What that symbolizes is I'm in deep connection with this truth that's here, and I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to make it a problem. I'm going to do my best to feel it and view it from a neutral place and just be with my humanity around it. That doesn't mean I'm going to condone it. Doesn't mean I'm going to perpetuate the pattern that I don't want, but I am going to be in true relational contact with it. And then from that place, and this is where I'll answer it in a different way now, you have to prioritize and make effort. You have to choose to do different. I can relate to your situation on my child's, high touch point, high contact, high all the things, right? We don't have family around us. I don't think you do either. Like this, it's a lot. I don't necessarily want my child to just go with anyone, So those times are more sparse. And if we don't make effort, and it's been a learning curve and a bit of a roller coaster. And if we don't make effort, and we don't prioritize, and we don't choose to work on our own selves and the struggles that come up within us, then we just remain more disconnected. Right. But the beautiful thing is, again, I said this earlier around, trauma bonds and mirrors that we become for each other, is that through the effort and through the prioritization and through doing the difficult thing, when maybe all you want to do is go to sleep. I'm not talking about, have sex anyway, but sometimes you may need to, right? Just have sex anyway. Like maybe it has to be mechanical for a little bit. And that's going to be, that's okay as well. Like it doesn't have to be this perfect fucking thing that it has to be this way.
Yeah. You might wait forever if that's your
You
priority.
will wait forever, not mine. I think you will wait forever because I don't think that perfection exists until perfection doesn't, paradoxically, again, because I think life is full of paradoxes, perfection doesn't exist until you embrace the truth of what is, right? And then it can be interpreted as perfection because you're just accepting as is. And so you've got to put priority in, you've got to prioritize, you've got to put effort in. But the first step is to not avoid and pretend because you don't want to be that guy that's in a love, or that girl that's in a loveless marriage. Right. Or that person that's in there's love there, but it's a sexless marriage maybe, or that person that had an idea of what it would look like. And there's going to be ebbs and flows in relationship, man. But how can you keep coming back to each other in new ways, and not just new ways, but in kind and generous and graceful ways, in compassionate ways, in non-judgmental ways? Like that's the work, right? And that there lays foundation for intimacy to naturally, spontaneously spark and to have energy and enthusiasm for it. And when there's not, if there's a pattern of that not happening, great. Don't deny it. Have a conversation with each other. Have an exploration. Embrace it. Okay, what do we want to do next? What am I willing to do? What do I need to look at? Where do I need to go within myself? What actions do I need to take? What sacrifices do I need to make? Whatever the questions are that you're asking yourself to prioritize this thing that actually is really important. Because, like, again, man, just being a parent and being a quote unquote conscious parent, I don't mean to throw that term around, but what I mean, I'll define that for myself, is just a parent that I don't want to be unconscious. I don't want to be reactive. I don't just want to sort of go with what the societal norm is that's happening around me. I want to be very deliberate and intentional with the choices I make as a parent and for my child, right? That's what I mean by conscious parent. I just want to pay attention to all the choices that are important, from the food that she gets to the materials that she wears on her body. And I don't want to be pedantic about it. I just want to be aware, like to where she plays, to who she plays with, to what kids she's hanging around with, like where she's spending her time, how am I talking to her, am I reacting? I want to just be aware of her environment as a parent, right? And so with that said, I also want to be aware of how I'm interacting with her mother, because there's a stack of research that shows, and I can attest to this just from how my dad treated my mum and how they treated each other, and the quote unquote bad patterns that the maladaptive patterns I picked up on that I have to undo, or I choose to undo, which is fucking hard, right? And as opposed to like, why don't I just be more mindful of, am I sharp with my wife? Am I being impatient with her because I'm having a bad day and it's easy and convenient to, be impatient with her because we live together and she's not going to go anywhere because she's my partner and we chose each other and all that. Like, take that shit for granted. Like, can I be more attentive and more thoughtful about how I connect with her and how I speak with her? And I don't always get it right, man. That's the thing. Like, I can be mean. I can be impatient. I can be abrasive. I can be reactive. And I do my best to come back and repair from that. And I also don't want to be a broken record of, well, I'll just do the thing that's mean and then just keep coming back and saying sorry. Mm-hmm. Cool, but that's not, and I don't want to be hard on myself about that, but I also want to do better. And again, not from a place of shame, but from a place of, I believe I can do better. Sometimes there are days where I don't feel I can, but I can come back to the truth of, okay, I'm human. And when I look back at who was I a year ago, 2 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, oh yeah, I'm growing. Oh yeah, and that's going to be enough as well. Like, I'm definitely growing. I'm definitely improving and evolving. And I want to keep bringing that to the partnership.
I love this piece that you mentioned about speaking the truth. It's so simple. The truth is like a powerful yet simple concept, and in my men's community, ARCA, we say that there's three main things that make the group run: speaking the truth, listen for the truth, and protect the container, and that's for all of the men to do. All the men practice speaking the truth, listening for the truth in each other, and then protecting the container that we've created. And two of those are about truth. Like it's simple, but there's layers to that. That's an infinite practice of like, yeah, what is my truth? And how can I articulate that? How can I speak that? How can I have the hard conversation? How can I have the hard conversation while also being vulnerable and not just pointing the finger at the other person, and maybe owning like my feelings, and not trying to like argue a case and prove the other person wrong, you know? But that being like a key ingredient to keeping a relationship alive and well is like attuning to, being present to, and speaking about what the truth is about your relationship, or what's going on between you and your partner, or what you're feeling when she said that, or what you felt when you said this, you know, speaking the truth to each other. I really do see that being something that keeps that fire going, you know, because when you pull the truth away, and I talk about this in men's groups, when we pull our truth away from the group and we quit listening for the truth and we quit speaking the truth, the fire that we're all building in the middle here slowly starts to go out. And in a romantic relationship, it's like that as well. There's a fire that you've built between the two of you. And in the beginning, it's just kind of cooking on its own. And it slowly can go out from neglect. And so this devotion to the truth is, it's actually a powerful concept. And it's not easy to do. It's simple, but it is not easy to do. It's not easy to prioritize sitting down and, you know, saying what you've been feeling with your partner when it's been, you know, gnawing at you, or when you regret a way that you showed up. You know, it's much easier to say like, hey babe, let's just like watch Netflix tonight and cool it, you know?
Yeah.
And everyone, you do have to do that. Everybody, I'm not saying Netflix isn't therapeutic sometimes, you know, sometimes you do just need to chill.
Yeah.
But
Like anything though, it can be overused. What's the come from? You know, I think you're really speaking deep truth here. The truth shall set us free. The truth is vitality. And where there's a lot of energy, irrespective of how you interpret that, whether you interpret it negatively or positively, if there's a lot of vitality and energy with a thing that you're confronted with, or you're sharing, you're on the quote unquote right path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? What have you learned, especially in the last 3 years when you've been compressed and sort of, your time has been stretched, your energy has been stretched, your sleep has been stretched. What have you learned about how to keep the spark alive between you and your partner? You know, your book is called Tuned In and Turned On: A Path to True Connection, Deep Healing, and Lasting Love. And I think it's cool to see a book with this title coming from a man in the phase that you're in. You know, for me, as a guy who has had those preconceptions about married men when I was younger, you know, to see a guy with a kid releasing a book like this is inspiring. So, you know, what are some of those things that keep you tuned in and turned on?
Yeah, well, like you, firstly, I just want to say I never wanted to be married. I never really wanted to have a child or any of that. That really, I'm 43, I'm 44 in a couple of months. It wasn't until I was like maybe 36 or something that revelation hit me. And I was doing some really deep inner work at that time around my father and my relationship to him. I was working with my tantric practitioner. And anyway, but that was, for most of my life, it was the last thing that I wanted, you know, but it was coming from fear, and it was coming from modeling that was very unhealthy. But to answer your question, I work on me, man. Like that's the foundation. Like it's like, how do you keep the spark alive, and how do you still create connection, and how do we practice intimacy? I think it's a number of things. I work on myself, and I'll give you a very clear example of that in a moment, of, you know, just a very recent revelation. Again, it's not a revelation, but it's the way it has landed in my body is different to how it's landed in my body in the past. So there's that. There's working on self. There's being very deliberate and intentional with how we spend quality time. And then it's really a practice of seeking to understand the other. Really, really listening and holding an intention to understand the other's perspective, like their pain, their curiosity, their joy, their desires, and not making it about me. And both of us having that practice as often as possible with each other is very liberating, right? Because if I can do that, and particularly, working on myself and being very connected to the parts of me that maybe I project or how I show up in reactive ways. Because if I can help the feminine in my life feel safe, not make her feel safe, but just behave in a way that facilitates her relaxing a lot more and her hypervigilance, being dialed down and her being able to trust more, I get more from her, which really, I get more from her in a healthy way, which really nourishes me because I had a very unhealthy dynamic with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
There was enmeshment and parentification and emotional incest there and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, very, very few speak about, which is the boy-mother relationship that's unhealthy, right? And how that shapes men in really damaging ways. And really doesn't allow men to mature and grow, even though they're, big adults, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sort of sidebar. So I'll give you an example just of, the inner work piece, right? And so I was working on this particular issue with my teacher, just, talking about my impatience. And he was saying, you haven't embraced your impatience. You haven't accepted that this is your window of tolerance. You're attempting to be this perfect parent, perfect husband, perfect person. And so, like, if I unpack that, it's like there's a big part of me that doesn't want to admit that, you know what, I'm actually not that patient of a person because of the story that I've put around it. Like, it's all comparison, I get it, right? Like, patient compared to who and what. But it's just this whole story that if I'm not patient, then I'm not stoic, I'm not resilient, I'm not really a strong man, I'm not really that enlightened or conscious or smart or intelligent, and people are going to see, like, you know what, fuck Ben, I'm just not that patient, bro. Like, I'm fucking not. And that just, and look, yes, sometimes, sure, I have a stack of patience, but I have this perception of myself. I'm so hard on myself, man. Like, this is one of my shadows and afflictions. It's not about perfection. It's just about, I'm very judgmental towards myself. So what do you think is going to happen in the context of relationship? I'm going to be judgmental towards other people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's happened so much because I haven't embraced this part of me and just say, you know what? I'm not that patient. So a direct example is I might be with Athena and she's trying to get in the car seat and I'm just getting impatient because I've had all these, whatever the reasons are, it's irrelevant. And instead of like being short or sharp with her, I can just say, you know what, darling, Daddy's impatient right now. I thought I'd like to be more patient, but I'm actually not. So I'm just going to take a moment to have some breaths and you're going to do your thing. And I'm going to get into my body for a moment. Like that is a better choice than snapping at her or telling her to hurry up. But what I'm saying, I'm getting to a point here. The point that I'm hoping people are really hearing is that because I haven't accepted me, I'm not accepting her. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm projecting that. And so that's the inner work piece. Like when I'm constantly working on myself, when I say constantly, I'm just like 24/7, but I have a commitment to be aware of what's happening within me and really unpack the layers of it and be more relational with that part of me. I tend to be less reactive and survival based in my relationships. Mm-hmm. And that's really important because, again, like what I said earlier around being a consistent, safer space for the feminine in my life, which is, again, back to your sort of original question around how do you facilitate this connection and intimacy? Well, it's got to begin with me. I don't mean that in like a narcissistic, self-absorbed way. I mean, like I've got to be responsible for my behaviors and notice the subtleties of them as well.
100%. Because the alternative is you bring your impatience into the home and you get snappy and you start enforcing that on everybody around you, including yourself.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be around you. And
I'm self-righteous in that.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Yeah. I was laughing as you were talking because I can very much relate, when I'm moving, I am a fast mover and I want shit to go quickly. And when stuff's not working the way that I want it to work, I can get pretty, I can get frustrated. I can get angry. I had an experience yesterday where I was trying to make smash burgers. There was no thawed butter and I wanted to thaw. The butter should have been on the counter. And so I put some in the microwave. I put it on defrost and I'm doing a bunch of stuff in the kitchen. Then I hear bang in the the microwave, and there's just butter dripping from the ceiling of that thing. And my wife and my friend Lee are there, and they're like, "What's going on, babe?" And I was like, I hit my limit, like I was like, I need help, and they're like, "What do you need
At
help with?"
least
I was
you
like,
said
"Can
that.
somebody clean the microwave?" And I'm just
Yeah.
going to go outside and do the burgers. And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we got it.
Yeah. At least you did that. Like, at least you said, look,
Yeah.
I've hit my limit. Like, I've been in such avoidance of pretending that I have this fucking Zen limit, which I don't.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the realization that it's really landed with me, man. So I'm very inspired by you. Like, the fact that you said, hey, I've hit my limit, that is something that I have avoided because I just haven't wanted to be imperfect, or I haven't wanted to get it wrong, or I haven't wanted to make myself wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of my next step with relationships today. So, like, hey, but again, in a way that doesn't make it a problem or judge it.
Yep.
I've hit my limit. I've got to take a break. Like, and not make it mean, I'm only patient for 3 minutes, therefore I'm a piece of shit. I can't do that. That's not helpful either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is a really deep teaching, man, because like with your kid, for instance, if you're not owning your impatience, you start putting that on her, and the message quickly becomes there's something wrong with you because you're not fast enough. You're not getting in your seat fast enough. Yep. You're not listening to me. And, kids remember that energy. I've heard so many life stories, and this kind of stuff translates across time, especially when it's a pattern,
I'm very cognizant of it, brother. And that's why, like, I do my best to not get into shame about it, but I'm very cognizant about that. Like, I want her to be a free kid in the sense that who gives a fuck if we get to gymnastics 5 minutes late?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I want, like, even the other day, like, she was squirming out of my arms, and I had to squeeze her to make sure she, like, anyway, there were circumstances I had to, because we were walking up the stairs. I didn't want to drop her and all that. Anyway, and she's like, owie, daddy, you're squeezing me. I'm like, and I sort of immediately softened up. I didn't realize, because I was frustrated, but also I was trying to protect her and not help her fall because she was getting upset. And like, in that moment, I said, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to squeeze you so hard. I just wanted to make sure you didn't fall. And then even 2 hours later, when I'm putting her to bed, remember when daddy was squeezing you? I'm so sorry, darling. I didn't mean to squeeze you or hurt you that hard. And just because I don't want her to think that, her having a fit is going to be punished or whatever, or her being in her big emotions is going to be punished. And so that's the sort of conscious parenting I was talking about. Like, just I'm cognizant, and sometimes to a pain point, because again, I'm not going to get it perfect, man.
Yep.
Parenting's fucking hard, brother. I mean, I know it's not only hard, but it's just when it's hard, it's hard because it pushes up against your stuff.
Yep. Yeah. You're tired. You're hungry. You're touched out, especially for moms. You got a squirmy, yelling kid. Maybe you said something you regret already. Your wife's not happy. It can really take a guy to his breaking point really quickly. But there was this other thing you said about parentifying. You're being parentified by your mother, and this thing that you're doing with your kid. Like, I think people need to understand the nuance there, and how important and how different it is from what your mom did with you, where you're telling your kid that you're impatient. Like, you're actually sharing what you're feeling and experiencing, and what we would call a negative emotion. You're telling your kid that, and some people might say, like, why would you tell your kid that? But you were owning that. You were owning that that's something that you were feeling, and that you were going to deal with that, and you were actually modeling how to deal with it. Like, oh, I'm impatient right now, and it's actually going to affect you if I don't just take a minute to get back to my groundedness. Go take a breath, take a few breaths. I've noticed the more breath work I do around my daughter, the more she does that.
For
and
sure.
when I'm not doing it, she doesn't. So I think that was really cool too. Like, I saw some recent stuff around how when parents share, especially at the end of the day, they talk about, like, oh, I did this today, and that was really hard, and I maybe did this, and that was a mistake, and then I felt bad about that, and then here's how I processed that, and I came back down, and I just walking your own humanness, your own human story of what it's like to move through the day with your kid is modeling. You're showing them what it's like to have a journey, and that adults aren't perfect. Adults aren't gods. Mom and dad are not gods. and we're human just like you, and we're here to just, be on the human journey together. There's a real humility in that. So yeah, I applaud that.
Deeply.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
beautiful, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah. It's not, I'm working on it. It's definitely something that I'm working on. And I'm very cognizant of it. Really love what you said about the sort of deeper layers of sharing, at the end of the day, because we all have dinner together every night, unless I'm away or something, but we have dinner every night together and bedtime every night. Like, I really appreciate and love that. And I've got to a place where like, I don't like missing out on that, even if I've got other stuff on, and I try not to. Like, I schedule things around it, and I just it's a beautiful part of the day where we can connect. But just what you shared around that process it's just a great process, and really, I think, supports their little brains and the way they see in processing, but the way they see themselves, and that they don't have to then deify us, and they don't need, as parents, and pedestalize us, and they don't also need to feel so bad about themselves.
Yeah. Sharing the human journey together.
Mm.
Yeah. So I love what you said about, how to keep the spark alive. The first piece was like, work on you, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go straight to like, well, here's all the stuff that we do together. Here's all the practices that we do. Like, no, you, as a man, like, you spend time getting right with yourself so that you can show up to your relationship in a good way. Like, so much of that journey that you're sharing, like earlier in our conversation here, that the struggles that you were going through, the time at the ocean, all the work that you did on yourself after that, it's like self work, inner work, and that prepared you for the relationship that you have today, and it's still something that you have to work on, and John Wineland and I talked about that a lot when he came on my show a couple of years ago, when he wrote From the Core, which is really like, dude, if you want to be good in relationship, number one, you got to work on you. Take care of yourself. What is your medicine? Where is your growth? How do you keep your own fire alive so that you have some fire to bring to this relationship?
Yeah.
So I love that piece. And, the quality time, I want to touch on the quality time, the curiosity I love as well. When I had Allison Armstrong on, we were talking about curiosity the whole time and the importance of that in relationship. But I'm curious about the quality time piece. Like, what are the practices and some of the things that you've learned to prioritize with Christine over the last few years that have been helpful? And this is very applicable for me and for men in our position.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I think curiosity leads to spontaneity, and spontaneity breeds, the energetics of variety and novelty. And that also then entices us to remain together, because it's really attraction. It's magnetism, right? I think that's an important distinction as well to really connect to. But man, like, to answer your question very directly, it's the simple stuff. It's making time to exercise together, making time to eat together, to walk together, and to talk about our days and talk about, what we've got going on in our own lives, but with each other, to dream weave a little bit and maybe we could go to Montana this next month, or whatever, whatever it may be. Like, just create space for just walking on the beach, going to the ocean. Of course, yes, intimate time together as well. Just sitting down and watching a movie that we may enjoy, like really simple things, man. And then, when we're feeling disconnected, creating space to share. So there's a practice that we'll come back to often, which, like, if you look at a space of a week or like 7 days, on a Tuesday, or say Monday, like on a Monday, she may just spend some time sharing just whatever's on her heart, whatever. Could be, I wake up with a migraine this morning, or it's not bad stuff only, or in the frame the negative, which is whatever. Like, she just has time to just share. Maybe it's something that she's upset with me about, or whatever it may be, right? And I just really listen. Like, I'm seeking to understand that. And it takes 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's it. I reflect back to her. I mirror back. I provide empathy. Like I get really curious about her sharing, and to the point where she just doesn't feel she needs to share anymore. And she may go to bed, or we may watch a movie, or we may cuddle, or we may have sex, or it doesn't matter. Whatever. There's no outcome, that specific outcome that must be generated from that sharing. Mm-hmm. And then maybe on the Thursday, roles reverse. I'll do the same. And it's a way just to really communicate and connect with each other and hear each other without judgment, without needing to fix it, without needing to change anything. I heard something once that was really, really cool. Can't remember where I heard it from, so I can't provide the person that I heard it from. But basically it's like, do you want to be hugged? Do you want to be heard? Or do you want to be helped? Hugged, heard, or helped? Or a combination of all three, right? And so like sometimes we'll just, we'll lead with that. But that's a practice, like those 2 days a week or 2 evenings a week after we put Athena down, that's a practice. And that practice keeps you in connection and keeps you in not being in resentment, not being in withhold, and not being in judgment, which when it festers turns into disconnection and anger and blame and shame, both self and projected. Yeah. And so that's a really powerful practice. But again, like back to the simple shit. Do the simple shit. Go to a favorite cafe together when you can. We have to, which is hard because again, like we work and we love what we do. We're both very creative. We have to do most of our connection time when Athena's in, nature school and doing a little thing and that type of, so it's during the day, which is fine. Like, it's beautiful. I mean, where we live is beautiful. So the sun's out and the ocean and all those good things. So, you got to be deliberate. You got to make it work for yourself. But I would just say stick to the simple practices are the ones that often are most effective because they're easier to access as well. Yeah. Don't try and get all fancy and go, I'm going to go to this restaurant that we can't get into for 3 months. I mean, that's great. Do that. Sure. I mean, I love fancy things and I love good food, but simple, accessible.
Yeah.
Don't use
excuses. 100%. Yeah. People often focus on, it can be easy to focus on like performative, grand gesture type things, gifts, but like those things don't really get into the mechanics of what keeps a relationship good. They don't really, they can contribute, but they're not going to keep the fire alive on their own. And this practice that you're describing is not easy.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And no. The one, no, it's not. Definitely not. It requires a lot of self-regulation and a lot of breathing, and that's part of but that's part of the process. Like you may get to that point where you get reactive and you want to get defensive. Don't. And if you do, it's okay. You got to work through it. That's the whole point. How do you repair? How do you recover? It's all part of it, right? Yeah. But to your point about performative, man, we live in a world where, especially our industry, man, or our space, the personal development, personal transformation space, the sort of quote unquote spiritual development space, it is so wrought with performance and peak experience being the pinnacle of transformation or change. And that's not the only place where transformation occurs. And in fact, transformation and deep, meaningful change does not occur exclusively in those places. You need more subtle nudges, consistent, subtle practices of being different and feeling yourself differently that aren't a peak experience, that aren't a 3-day Tony Robbins event. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. And I love Tony Robbins, in all honesty, like what he stands for, what he's done for the space, who he is, as far as I know him, right? But it's not that the world we live in is so performative, man, because everyone's just so saturated and everyone's trying to get an edge. Just fucking regulate your nervous system. It's like in business, buy the fucking boring business that's actually going to make you money. The washers and dryers, the car wash. I'm just giving ones that are familiar. But the lifestyle cash flowing businesses that are boring but are actually needed by society, and if you do it right, you're going to get a lot from it. It's like it's the same with relationships. So do the stuff that is really simple. Don't try and do the performative shit because it's not really going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, this piece around clearing, I think I just want to double click on that. And I think people really need to hear that, that like we need to sit and listen to each other. We need to, we already spoke about pursuit of the truth and speaking the truth, but we also need to learn to listen for the truth in each other. And the exercise that you described is different than an intellectual conversation where people are going back and forth. You say something, then I say something, then you say something, then I say something. We go somewhere together, right? This is a more intentional exercise where you're saying to the person, hey, share your heart, share your mind with me. And I'm actually just going to practice listening, reflecting back to you and saying, the imago process, like, is there more? Tell me more about that. Oh, I heard you say blank. Tell me more about that. These, by the way, these are basic things that get taught to you in counseling school, that like, this is how you counsel. You like reflect back what the person said, mirror a little bit, and then ask them if there's more, and you just let them unload, go somewhere, get to understand them at their core, to go deeper and deeper. And that's a powerful process when there are so many other things in our lives that want to consume all of our energy. Everybody's figuring out how to make it in the world. Everybody's figuring out how to make money, how to take care of our homes. Oh, my mom's sick, I got to take care of my mom, and my dad's this, and I've got kids, and my brother's over here. Like, we've all got family, and we got to take care of our bodies. Like, in this phase of life, in your 40s as a man, there are many, many different things that want to completely consume your energy. But if you neglect your romantic relationship, if you neglect to sit down and just slow down and listen and get curious about your partner, the fire goes out and the passion dries up, and this is a really beautiful medicine that is underutilized by a lot of us, because it just, in the fast paced world that we're in the distracted world that we're in, it really requires really slowing down for each other, and getting curious about somebody who you've known for a long time. Like, when we're in romantic relationship for a long time, there's this tendency, our ego has this tendency to like decide that we know everything about the person. We build a story about them, and then we're no longer curious, but the curiosity is a muscle that can be stretched. We can practice being curious about each other. We can practice going like, hey, how was your day? Like, and what did you experience in your day? What are you wrestling with right now? What's it like to be you today? And that's a beautiful medicine that, and from just the last piece, men, if you actually do this with your feminine partner, where you truly just listen to them and reflect back what you heard and get curious about them.
You don't need to change anything.
It's magic. It's magic. There's so many guys that I've worked with where I say like, hey, take this imago dialogue and go and practice this with your partner. Yeah. You're not allowed to share any of like what's going on for you. You just sit, you just listen. And they're like, whoa, dude, I did it. And she was like, oh my God, I feel seen and heard. And I actually feel turned on. Like, I feel closer to you. He was like, this is like magic for my relationship. So yeah, this is a very important and deep practice.
Yeah. And the bonus part is not to get, like, even if it's about you, even if they're upset about you or they're upset that's something that you've done, the bonus is to still not make it about yourself. And if you do get triggered and if you do get dysregulated, don't make that wrong. Just can you come back to regulation? Can you come back to making it about her experience and not yours? Because in that moment, that's an empowering action as well. You're not giving into your reactivity. You're not giving into your, I need to survive right now. Actually, I don't. I'm actually quite safe. Relationally safe, emotionally safe. I don't need to be defensive. I don't need to share my part. I can just listen.
Yeah.
Listen, there's another aspect, there's another layer to this practice, which is you let that, so she shares on Monday. The next day, you give it 24 hours. The next day, you ask her, you say, hey, if you have them, I have some reflections, observations. Would you like to hear them? If she's a yes, then share them, but in a compassionate, empathic way, non-judgment. And if she's a no, say no problem. And same is for you. Like, reverse the roles on Thursday and the Friday. There's another layer to that. But the reason why the reason why I didn't mention it is because that is secondary. You're going to get your chance to be heard on the Thursday anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to keep coming back. This is what we do. We keep trying to be protective and be right and self-righteous. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, there is some real medicine in that, in the way that you describe the practice, even without the follow-up day. Just the Monday and the Thursday practice. Yeah, that I think is probably wild for some people to hear. Like, oh, okay, on Monday, I'm going to just sit and listen to her. She's going to tell me all this stuff. Some of it might be about me, and my job is to just listen. My job is also to self-regulate, not react, not lash out, not close my ears down, stay open and curious. And then I have 3 days of transition before I get to share. And you're saying, 3 days, dude. Like, you're going to be fine. Yeah.
Practice regulation in those 3 days, and practice connection. So if you're the type of person that wants to lean out because you've heard something that's upset you, don't lean in. Get closer. Write her a love note every morning for 3 days. Touch her hand. Tell her that you really appreciate what she shared. Tell her every day in the morning. Like, do things that are in connection, because that's going to push on your edges as well. But what it's also going to do is soften those edges. It's going to push on them. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to soften them. So you don't go into the protective, survival-based, reactive patterns of "fuck you, I'll show you."
Yeah. Is there something? There's something there for me, for sure. When my partner's upset with me,
and me,
it's quite triggering. So I'm curious if there's something there for you. For a lot of guys, that's true. And so what you're pointing to is a very challenging thing, like, how do I, can I let her be mad at me and still be in love with her? Can I let her be mad at me
very
and still
difficult to
show
do
her
from personal
expressions of
experience.
love? Yeah.
It's a great question, the way you're framing it. Yes, can I still love her through her being angry at me or being upset at me, or me disagreeing with her completely, or me wanting to be in my ego and self-righteous? Can I still just let love, like, what would love do now? Would love really be defensive and shut down or abuse her or withhold from her? No, love wouldn't do that. Love would lean in. Love still has, healthy limits and isn't a sadist or a masochist or anything but love would not be survival based and reactive.
Yeah, that is beautiful, man. That's an edge for men to walk, just like that. It's almost like a Zen koan. Like a Zen koan is like an unanswerable question that you pursue forever. How do I stay in love and act with love when my wife is angry with me? Just like walking with that every day and learning to practice that. That's definitely been huge for me in my life. And, it's really changed me. Yeah. Figuring out how to practice with that. Yeah. Beautiful, man. I think the last piece that I'd love to touch on is, just going back to your daughter, Athena. How do you see a father's influence or a father's impact on a young girl, and how she views the masculine, and perhaps how that might shape her romantic partnership interests, her romantic proclivities?
Yeah, very, very simple. There's two ways, and one's probably more important than the other. And I touched on this earlier, but I'll just be more definitive now. How I treat her in a consistent way, without reactivity and without volatility, and more importantly, how she sees me communicate with her mother, how she witnesses, how Athena witnesses me repair with mum, take ownership, argue, like how she witnesses that, and how I show up in that is very important when it comes to shaping her perception of herself, of course, and her relationship to the masculine and the men that she'll ultimately choose. So I'm very cognizant of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It definitely brings a layer of checking yourself
Yes.
that wasn't there
It's
previously.
difficult for me. I won't say it's difficult for other people, but men, but it's difficult for me because I want to just be self-righteous. I want to be defensive. I want to be protective. And I will do an element of that, even in front of Athena. So I've got to check that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to check that. So I've got to, I want to.
Yeah, me too. And, for my wife and I in our clearing conversations and in our just processing of how we're showing up with each other, there's more vigilance now than there was years ago, and we've had to we've definitely had some conversations where my wife is bringing a level of like, hey, I saw this thing in you years ago and I wasn't okay with it, but I was like, I wasn't going to leave you over it. But now that we have a daughter, I am way more vigilant about this. This is bothering me way much.
Yeah, and
Way
probably under
more now,
resourced. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Where her
yeah.
tolerance levels are less. I mean, I've heard that from Christine a lot as well. Where, hey, I've noticed things that you did when before Athena, and yeah, I could tolerate them in different ways. And to be honest, I probably could have been more forthright and truthful about them with you. That's what she would say to me. And now
Mhm.
that we have Athena, it's A, I'm less resourced, and B, to just sort of deal with it, and B, I don't want to sweep it under the rug, and that's my pattern. That's her, she takes ownership of that.
Right.
So, we get to work through those patterns too.
Yeah. It's a crucible, man. It's a crucible for growth,
Yeah.
right? It's a beautiful opportunity. In some moments it feels like a burden, and I think as a man, there are plenty of those moments where the heat is up, the fire is hot. We don't necessarily feel like we chose it, right? Like we can be in victimhood around it, but we did choose it, and we are here for it, and leaning into the opportunity for growth that's presented. You're being called to be a king more and more each day, in this relationship and in your household as a father. So yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for coming on my
Appreciate
show,
you, bro.
dropping in to talk about these subjects, to share a bit about your book and to share about your story, and just be so vulnerable with, your story from your past, but also just your present reality, your imperfections and your humanness. Like I said, I respect that about you a lot. And I was sharing with somebody recently, we were sharing about how social media is like just can be really fake or performative. And especially as a coach or a healer of some kind, trying to like share on social media, it can feel icky or hard to share yourself, in a way. But I actually mentioned you the other day to that friend and said, like, I've been watching Steph's stuff lately, and he's just very much himself. He shares his raw, authentic opinions, and I respect that about you. So
Thank you,
thanks
man.
for doing what you do, man.
Yeah, appreciate you very much.
Okay, I'm going to share the link to your book in the show notes. I'm going to share the link to your Instagram and your other channels with people. And when does the book come out?
Yeah, book comes out with Hay House February 3rd, so very soon. And you can get the book. There's a stack of bonuses right now as well, which I know you'll share this link at tunedinandturnedonbook.com. Some really, really beautiful bonuses, actually. With the purchase of the book, you can get it from Amazon and all the other places. And, so much of what we've touched on today, man, we really unpack in the book as well, especially the sacredness of relationship and union and how it can be a platform for immense growth and the crucible, and then how to navigate it. And, the first part of the book really speaks to dealing with our own stuff at a base level. And then that journey continues, of course, but that opens us up for a healthier relationship. And it's in that space that, God becomes way more evident in our lives. Just, the potential that is us as humans becomes more evident and accessible in our lives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for it, man. And I trust that it will get into the hearts and hands of those that need to read it,
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
be with it.
Congratulations, man, on writing a book. My
Thank
wife's an
you.
author. She's
Yes.
currently writing her second book, and it's a lot of work, dude. It's a lot of work. And the editing
Yeah.
process is insane. And you
Ridiculous.
write the book, you think you're done, and then you're only like less than halfway. You go through the editing process. It's long. And then the
Yeah.
podcast tour. You're doing the podcast tour.
Yeah.
You're doing the talk so many times. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work. So yeah,
Yeah.
I admire what it takes to put a book out in the world, and yeah, wish you a smooth launch here, and then just
Thank
like a
you.
nice long tail. I look at guys like
Thank you.
Robert Glover, right, who wrote
Yeah.
No More Mr. Nice Guy, and his book just continues to become
Yeah.
more and more of a staple on people's bookshelves.
Yeah.
So I wish that for your
Yeah.
book.
Thank you, man. Thank you for your blessings, brother. Appreciate you having me on your show as well.
All right. Thanks, Steph. We'll have you
Thank
on
you.
again sometime, maybe a few years in the future, and we'll check in again.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. All the best, brother.